Well, thank you all for joining us. We're here for the October Sea Grant Water Resources All Hands Call, and really happy to have you all here with us today. We have a pretty packed agenda, but hopefully there's lots of updates, and we'll be spending most of our time hearing from you all, which will be great. We are going to go over just a few Water Resource Network updates. Then we're going to get updates from quite a few people out in the network. Then Kelly Samick is going to talk to us today about rapid response opportunities. And then at the end, we have a few minutes where we can actually have answer some additional questions, have any discussion items that you guys might want to talk about. And then I just want to let you guys know about a couple of opportunities that are coming from down the pike. Without any further ado, let's talk about the network opportunities. And first of all, what I really wanted to do was take just a minute to let you guys know about the 2 sessions that we hosted at Sea Grant Week a couple weeks ago in Cleveland. It was so wonderful to see everyone, and so many great faces, and actually some new faces as well. We actually have some new additions even on the call today. And so it was just a wonderful meeting. We actually hosted a Water Resource Network session on the Tuesday of Sea Grant Week. Had quite a few people that came in and talked to us. We had several representatives of past funding opportunities that talked to us about the proposals they put together and things that seemed to work well for them, and tried to think about some lessons learned for moving forward in the future. And then we also on Thursday had a session where we talked a bit about some of the information that I collected network wide. I had over 40 listening sessions with people around the network, over 280 people that were engaged, and started talking about some of the findings and where we want to go from here. And I am starting to work on the actual proposal, the proposed recommendations for that project. And so what I really wanted to do was just to give you a high level overview of some of the real takeaway points from those 2 sessions. And first and foremost, what we really heard without a doubt was that we really want to use water resources as a connector across the Sea Grant network. And that really means that we want to find a way to better integrate it into other areas. And by other areas, we really mean the full gamut. That might mean things like Sea Grant focus areas that we're all very aware of, topical areas. There's so many things that we're already doing exceptionally well: aquaculture, HABs, PFAS, marine debris, green infrastructure. This list could go on, but really kind of integrating across some of these different topical areas as well. And one thing that also came out of this was, let's really try to integrate with the Sea Grant liaisons as well. And so I have asked all of the liaisons if they might have time to provide an update today. We have a couple here with us, and hopefully we'll get some more of those in the future as well, but try to bring them in too, and really, again, try to get a better connector across the entire network. Another idea that came out of these sessions was really kind of trying to hone in on some of the work that's been done on aquaculture and see how we might leverage some of the opportunities and the things that they've done to connect across the network and use those as maybe best management practices, but certainly ideas for us to work across this network as well. The third thing was to really make sure that as we're moving forward, not necessarily right now, but as we start thinking about moving forward, how can we help to bring in some of those external partners that I've been working with, and many of us have been working with for years now, thinking about other line offices of NOAA, the Water Resource Research Institutes. And we've, as many of you know, we've really been trying to figure out how to tap in a little bit better into cooperative extension. Some of our programs do that exceedingly well, but it's a piece that we've struggled with and had lots of fits and starts within my programming, as well as the Water Resources Network at large. The next one is to really use teams, and we want to build these teams now and build them in advance so that we can mobilize quickly when project opportunities or grants come available. And so thinking about how we might be able to do that better, differently, et cetera. And while these teams might be, whether it's teams or regional hubs, or, there's lots of different ways that we might capture this, but it's just kind of this idea of building stronger teams so that we were able to activate sooner when those opportunities arise. And then last but not least is this idea, so that I think most of you are familiar with the water scoping project that I've been working on now for almost a year and a half. And that is not scheduled to be done till the end of next June. But one of the things that we really want to try to do is to try to make sure that we formalize those recommendations back to the network at large sooner rather than later, and really want to try to hopefully have those ready to be delivered again to the network. Those don't go to the national office or the Sea Grant Association, but they come out to the entire network. So those will be things that you can really see and dig your hands into, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to talk about those again too before those recommendations are more in a finalized state, but trying to get those out by January or February again, if possible. So those were just some of the big takeaways from Sea Grant Week that I wanted to provide you all an update and let you know some of those things that were discussed. And just I'll ask quickly, are there any clarifying questions about what happened when we were up in Cleveland having to do with these sessions? And please feel free to unmute and speak up. We've got a small group, so we should be able to have a conversation. Okay. Well, then I will also just jump in and let you guys know that we do have 2 more webinars that we're planning or getting ready to go live with in just a couple of weeks. We're actually going to have a Water Resource Network webinar on HABs, and that's called Sea Grant's Response to Harmful Algal Blooms. That will be on November 2nd at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. You all have gotten a save the date with a registration for that, so hopefully y'all will register. And then we're also going to try and do a webinar on information that is publicly available from the National Water Model. We're looking at trying to do that sometime in early 2023, probably February-ish, give or take a little bit. If you'd like to help serve on particularly that second webinar planning committee, please let me know. Always looking for people that are willing to take an active role. With that, I want to open it back up to several people that are here on the call to provide updates about things that they're doing. I've broken this up into 2 different groups. We have some people here that are representing on groups or projects that are within Sea Grant, and then we also have several liaisons that are here to present. So we'll start with our groups and projects. And Kara, if you're willing, we'll have you go ahead and start off and talk to us about the Green Infrastructure Community of Practice.
Sure, thanks so much. So I know John Halata provided some updates too, but just to give you a brief overview too, first of who we are, what we've been doing. This group started several years ago, mostly from the Great Lakes Sea Grant Network. We've expanded in the past, I'd say about 2-3 years to incorporate land grant extension staff, and we now have municipal staff coming from a lot of the North Central region, but we've also had folks coming from throughout the country to the different webinars and networking events that we're hosting. So we're meeting once a month. The website is posted in the chat there. To sign up to get the announcements, you can click Join the COP. We also have a past call archive, so you can see webinar recordings of the different topics and some different resources that we've compiled, completed collectively, and had some other collaborative efforts too that we've worked on. So we just had our monthly meeting yesterday. It was an opportunity for folks from throughout the COP to jump in and share things they were excited about and working on. And we had groups representing states including Illinois, Vermont, Ohio, South Dakota, Minnesota, Georgia, and we had Digital Coast coming to share resources. So it's been a nice way to get to learn some new points of contact in collaborative projects in green infrastructure. For next month, we will be talking about some new pathways forward. We're looking to get some new. We have some people coming off and on our steering committee, and we also are looking for additional topics. And so charting a pathway forward for the next year or so. And we will have a December webinar too, that's to be determined. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you, Kara. And I just want to use this opportunity to kind of help with a clarifying point. In the past, this has been a little bit more Great Lakes and Central specific. You've really opened it up to pretty much anywhere. Any of the Sea Grant programs across the country are welcome to join you, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Central Region Water Network houses our website and our work, but it really is open to anyone who would like to join.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Kara. And Lisa, you have some updates for us from the Climate Network.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. And just a kind of quick update from the Sea Grant Climate Network. Some of the folks on this call are also part of that network, but if you're not familiar with it, we are a group of folks across the Sea Grant programs that work on climate adaptation, and kind of preparedness, planning. We have quarterly calls, and so our next quarterly call is November 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And those calls typically include brief presentations about projects or grant opportunity discussions. So we're putting together our agenda for the next call. But if you're not on the list for those calls, let me know, and I'm happy to help connect you with that. The other update that we have is that if anyone happens to be going to the National Adaptation Forum next week in Baltimore, there is a pre-forum gathering of the Sea Grant Climate Network on Monday, October 24th. So if you are going and you want more details about that, let me know, and I will get you the information that you need. So I'll put my email in the chat if anyone wants to connect about the Sea Grant Climate Network.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate your time. And next, Maya, I have your slides queued up ready for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. So thanks for the opportunity to talk briefly about the what has turned into the Sea Grant Marine Debris Community of Practice. We're a pretty new group. We formed in response to the information that we would be getting some funding through the infrastructure, what was the infrastructure bill at the time, and we knew that we didn't have a clue how that was going to come to us, or how we were going to get it, or any of that sort of thing. And so I sort of sent an email around to a bunch of folks saying, anybody interested in just like getting together and brainstorming and throwing ideas around and talking about what we might do if we get some funding? So that was what brought us all together. We, as a result of having a couple of sessions at Sea Grant Week, we're now up to 76 members representing, and I missed one, there are actually 32 programs. We're missing Rhode Island and Virginia, but otherwise we have all of the Sea Grant programs represented, as well as folks from the National Sea Grant Office. And again, thanks to Sea Grant Week, some folks from South Korea. And I've been having email conversations with them. So that's been really interesting. We are primarily operating under a, let's share resources kind of mode. And so I set up a Google Drive. We've had a number of jam boards over the last several months, just asking questions of folks that are part of this group, kind of trying to figure out what we might want to do as a community of practice. Where are the needs? How can we address those? If anybody does want to be added to the community of practice and get access to that Google Drive, all you have to do is send me an email, and my email address is there. And if whatever email address you are using to email me is not linked to Google, please send me a Google related email address so that you can access that Google Drive. All right, and my other slide, please. So what we did with all of the information that we've been collecting from folks was basically use that information to give us the content for 2 sessions at Sea Grant Week. We had one 90-minute session on the Tuesday and then a 3-hour session on the Thursday. And we had various presentations about topics that individuals and programs had said they were interested in learning more about. We also had some conversations about things that different programs, proposals that different programs have submitted to one or the other of the marine debris funding opportunities. And we're continuing those conversations in our Zoom meetings. We've been having those roughly monthly. Most recently, we started off having like twice a week meetings when we were in the frantic, what are we going to do if we get money mode? And now we've scaled that back. And we'll probably scale it back to more like quarterly once these proposals have been submitted and we start hearing what's happening with them. But I do want to give a shout out to Jill Bartolotta, who really helped organize the Sea Grant Week sessions. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Maya. We appreciate it, and glad to have you join us. I will turn it over to, no, sorry, Madison, it's you. So take us away and let us know about the Water Equity Project.
Perfect. Thanks, Karen, and thanks, everyone. Good afternoon. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about our One Block at a Time, or Water Equity Project, and this is a National Sea Grant funded project through the Water Equity in the Great Lakes funding opportunity that came through about a year ago. And so this is a collaboration between Minnesota Sea Grant, Illinois, Indiana Sea Grant, and Pennsylvania Sea Grant, and we have larger project teams in each of our regions as well. My colleague Tiffany Sprague presented a longer presentation on this effort back in the springtime. So if you want to learn more about it, you can connect with me, or I encourage you to watch Tiffany's presentation. And briefly, the goals of our project are to address climate and water challenges at a small, site-specific, kind of one block scale in marginalized communities in the Great Lakes. And we're using this mirrored assessment, engagement, and implementation kind of phasing. And one of my colleagues, Kara Salazar, is going to be on the call today too. So she's the spearheading the Illinois, Indiana projects. And next slide, we're going to share a little bit about where each team is at today. So in Illinois, Indiana, they have completed their implementation projects. So they installed a rain catchment, rain garden, and irrigation system at 2 community sites, one in Michigan City, Indiana, and one in Hammond, Indiana. And partially I'm sharing slides just to share these great pictures that Kara's team of their installed projects that Kara's team shared. They've had this great collaboration around Sea Grant, their local partners, and students from Purdue and the local community. There really are these multi-beneficial green infrastructure projects that address kind of this need for water at these community food production sites and water quality challenges. So really great to see that implemented in Indiana. Here in Minnesota side of things, we're still kind of working in our community. We're doing a community survey, gearing up for some focus groups this winter, and planning on implementation of a community design project next summer. And then our Pennsylvania team is working on a background assessment, relationship building with community groups, and planning for these community listening sessions coming up. And then their goal is to determine some project sites for implementation down the line as a next phase of their work. We're going to be compiling all of our work into a toolkit. So that's kind of the next stage with our big team. And hopefully we'll be able to share with you all at the completion of our project as well. But just really exciting work. And we're really learning from these 3 Sea Grant programs and our project teams, each in a different phase of our work and community. So a really wonderful effort to be involved in.
Thank you, Madison. Really grateful for that update as well. We will now turn things over to Pete Rowe. And Pete, do you want to provide us a quick update on the Mitigating Runoff Project?
Okay, very quick. Thank you, Karen. Again, as part of that national call, our project is optimizing green infrastructure and low impact development to mitigate impacts of freshwater systems. So I got to talk a little bit about the whole process of how we got to where we are at Sea Grant Week. But at this stage, we have our scoping document, or strategic document, however you want to call it. Strategic scoping document. It is at the national office. It is awaiting a more formal, official approval. But I've gotten some piecemeal feedback that it looks good. So when that gets a final we'll send that out to everyone. But we are encouraged to start putting together our RFP for the research of the phase 2 of the project. So we do have a strong draft of the RFP, and it is going to target the GI lid in urban and metropolitan areas of the Mid-Atlantic. So we have New York to North Carolina, including Pennsylvania. So that's the Mid-Atlantic Sea Grant region. And we'll be open to research projects that target the urban and metropolitan areas. More specifically, I think the wording, one of the wordings that we have in the draft RFP right now is purpose of the grant program is to fund research projects that will enhance and optimize the deployment of green infrastructures and low impact development technologies to mitigate stormwater runoff and reduce negative impacts of freshwater systems by expanding research to meet identified challenges and knowledge gaps. And so from last spring and early summer, when we did our surveys and whatnot, and what came out of that, and which will go into the RFP, we have 4 major focus areas of research. One is sustainable design, installation, and maintenance. The other is relevant and credible benefit cost information. The third major focus area is accelerated resilience and adaptation of GI lid projects, particularly in relation to climate change. And then lastly, efficient and inclusive planning and management of GI lid projects. So those are our main focus areas that we'll be looking to get proposals from. We still have a little bit of discussion on the process. I do know now I have a little bit more time. So the time frame is this is an 18-month research project. And we will be asking for letters of intent and the typical process to undergo review of the full proposals. We certainly hope we get enough proposals that we can spread across the geographic region from New York to North Carolina as part of our decision-making process. And looking for strong proposals that have Sea Grant programs and partners involved. Our original anticipated date was about now, but with our extension, it's probably by the end of the year, we will have the RFP out on the street, or a little bit before that. Again, I think I have a meeting set up next week for that. To discuss a little bit more fully on that, but that's where we are right now. We're waiting for the final version approval of our scoping document, and then getting our final RFP ready to go out. So we'll be moving forward on phase 2.
Wonderful, thank you, Pete. We appreciate that information, and I will just let Maya and Kara and Kiara know that Summer had put a note in the chat about wanting to maybe share information about your COPs on the website. So please take a look at that as well. Also wanted to share for Jess Brown with Georgia Sea Grant. She's been leading the idea and effort behind developing a green infrastructure think tank. And the idea behind this is not to duplicate efforts with the green infrastructure community of practice, but to really try to focus in and collect some people in advance to build teams and be ready to jump on funding opportunities to put on the ground green infrastructure projects to work in some of our Sea Grant regions. She had a meeting on September 21st. They were looking at a lot of introductions, and they were kind of doing an assessment survey. She wants to follow up with people. They're going to have another meeting on January 11th. If anybody would like to be a part of that, would like to circle into this group, please let Jess know. She's really welcome to have anyone come in and join them. And again, really the focus to be kind of looking for ways to develop as much as possible proposals that are ready to go as funding opportunities arise. So with that, I want to move on to the few of our liaisons that we have here today. And we'll start, Michelle, will you talk to us about what's going on with your coastal resilience liaison position?
Great. Thanks so much, Karen, for making this available to the liaisons. So I'm the Coastal Resilience DoD liaison. So I work with the Department of Defense. And so part of my job actually is working in their offices, helping them build their coastal and climate resilience expertise. So part of what I do is help them with funding proposal reviews, and I work particularly regionally in the Southeast with an organization called Surpass, which is a military and state agency group. And for them, I lead their Coastal Resilience and Regional Adaptation Work Group. So climate adaptation is becoming a bigger and bigger concern for the DoD, and they are putting more and more funding into projects in communities. So my focus is not on the installation, it's in the communities, but they're in the communities that are in some way related to the installations, the military installations. So those are some of the things I've been doing. I lead with the work group, I lead a monthly meeting, which is informational. And on the Sea Grant side, though, I've been connecting many of my colleagues with their installations, working on climate resilience projects. And I would invite anybody here that would like to connect with their installation or would want to know any more about DoD funding to do climate resilience to reach out and talk to me. The first thing that I did last year was a needs assessment among my colleagues in the climate network. And as a result of that, I finished that up in the spring. And as a result of that, I produced a document which I'll put the link in the chat here for best practices for engaging with military installations for climate resilience in defense communities. So that document kind of will walk you through DoD and the installation and how you get connected in with that. Although I'm always there to help with that process as well. I also have been doing lots of presentations around the country, mostly in the Southeast, but other places too. And at Sea Grant Week, so we had a military engagement session at Sea Grant Week, and we do have two programs that are very involved with their bases, and one is Pete's program that is very involved with Naval Weapons Station Earl, and another one is the Rhode Island program where Pamela Rubinoff has been very involved with Newport and helping them with a resiliency review. So we had them talk about their programs and help them reach out. And then another accomplishment that we had just recently completed a workshop and had 4 states, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia, came together at Parris Island, where the Eastern Marine recruits are trained on that installation, and got together for a 2-day workshop to talk about how they can get engaged, what the opportunities are. And those teams from each of those states are continuing to work together to develop proposals to work together on climate resilience projects. And lastly, because my colleagues from Mississippi, which is also part of my region, weren't able to attend, I'm going to go to them and we're going to do a workshop in February. So that's going on, and I will put my document in the chat and my email if you'd like to contact me. I'm happy to work with you to connect you to those resources and the installation.
Thank you, Michelle. We really appreciate that update. And we'll turn it over to Tim to talk to us about aquatic invasive species. Tim.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, Tim Campbell, Wisconsin Sea Grant. You go, Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers, Clean Drain Dry Guy. So been up to a bunch of stuff, but just some highlights as part of my relationship with the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force. we've been running an AIS outreach community of practice. We've had a handful of meetings on digital advertising, kind of outreach online. We'll be having a meeting coming up on invasive species denialism, which should be fun. And so if you're interested, or you have staff or partners that just might be interested in getting together to talk about aquatic invasive species outreach with some friendly people, send me an email. Be happy to get them added to the list. And then I think a cool project that we completed over the summer was a Great Lakes Landing Blitz kind of coordinated advertising campaign, where the Great Lakes Commission is coordinating a project where all the different states are getting out to boat landings to talk to boaters at water access points about aquatic invasive species issues. And something that I was able to do as part of the liaison project was take some digital advertising funding that the project had and work across the Great Lakes Sea Grant Network to do some coordinated advertising. It wasn't a ton of money, so it didn't really make sense to do like subcontract or subawards or anything like that. But we were able to work out a way that I could help these programs do some paid advertising, which was great because it kind of not only put our message in front of people, we were able to target that message and then increase all of our Facebook pages following. So future messaging efforts do better. So this is clearly something that's great for AIS, but it could work across other topic areas as well. So if people are interested in talking more about that, I'd be happy to kind of share what we did and the mechanics of that. And some other kind of quick accomplishments, just building off of that. I helped the Great Lakes Sea Grant Network and the Great Lakes Commission put in another larger grant for organisms and trade advertising, kind of using the same methods as the Landing Blitz to talk more about invasive species and trade and proper disposal methods and alternative plants that people can purchase. So excited to hopefully see that funded. And then I've also worked a little bit with Oregon Sea Grant on some funding for an after action report for kind of a large national trade finding of zebra mussels and mossballs. So excited to be helping all the different programs out and kind of doing more AIS work, but happy to talk more about anything another time if people have kind of questions or ideas.
Great, thank you, Tim. And maybe you could put your email in the chat as well if people have additional questions. And then last but certainly not least, Kiata, why don't you fill us in on what's going on with the Great Lakes region?
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me, Karen. So I guess a couple things real quick. One thing that I've been focusing on a lot in my work with NOAA and NOAA's Great Lakes Regional Team has been a Great Lakes economic valuation study that we funded through a variety of NOAA internal sources just to improve the NOAA data available for the Great Lakes and their National Economics Ocean Watch tool on Digital Coast. So I've been working with some economists, both at NOAA and a consultant to connect them, use basically the network of folks that Sea Grant works with and that NOAA works with in the region and taking advantage of this liaison role I have to connect those economists with different data sources across the region. We've held some workshops and different one-off calls with representatives of different industry groups in the region to identify data sources. So that's an ongoing effort, and we're in the process of trying to find additional internal funding for a second year of that as well. So that's less actively engaging Sea Grant, but more engaging the network of partnerships that these liaison roles tend to lend themselves to. So that's been really interesting and has connected in with some additional external partner groups related to ecosystem services valuation in the Great Lakes, et cetera. So through that, I've become engaged with this broader suite of organizations and partners that are trying to look at these blue economy ecosystem services valuation questions. And I'm trying to also keep in mind like where this might be useful for Sea Grant, whether it be the economic valuation community of practice that the National Sea Grant Office is leading. So I tag up regularly with them and with Allison Krepp from the national office, just to see how these efforts might link into other things that the Sea Grant Network is doing, because I think only actually have one economist in the Great Lakes that's a Sea Grant person and then maybe one additional person that looks at economic issues. So it's not something that we do a lot of from a Sea Grant perspective, but it's clearly important because of the RCE focus area. So that's the way I've been linking up with NOAA a lot. I also recently have been digging in more about how to better showcase NOAA data, GLERL data specifically, but also Great Lakes regional data for fishermen as a user group in the region. So one product we had focused on a lot was how to highlight sea surface temperature or lake temperatures for that a lot of charter boat fishermen actually use in the Great Lakes to plan where they're going to fish. And we had an old product that Sea Grant had run that crashed. So I've been working with NOAA's Coast Watch program in the region to develop another product that showcases that data in a way that's useful to fishermen, and have been facilitating conversations between the NOAA scientists that work on that and some fishermen steering committee of folks that we'd worked with in the past. And through that work, I just recently presented at the Michigan Charter Boat Association's annual meeting to showcase different climate data and tools that NOAA has that's of interest to people who are on the water a lot. So highlighting different locations where they can find marine forecast information from National Weather Service, as well as digging into a question that some of them have been asking lately, which relates to increased incidence of severe storms. So some of the fishermen are saying that they're having increased blow days in the last several years, over the last 15, 20 years. And blow days is a term they use when basically they have to cancel their trips that day because of wind, weather, waves, etc. So I've been looking through different data sets to try and see if there's trends or evidence of that anecdotal feedback from fishermen. And so far it's been really mixed results. So that'll be an ongoing thing to look into. But I think one of the interesting takeaways of that conversation is that it provides a venue to discuss climate change that's less politically controversial, because this is just straight about, we're seeing changes in the number of incidents of severe storms, and we have data that shows that through NOAA and partners. And this is a way to make it relevant and discuss that science and how we could look at that data and make it useful to a group of users where it affects their daily lives. So that's an ongoing kind of area of interest, and we'll see if I can get additional scientists at NOAA to dig into that data with me, because it's way messier than I would have thought. And I was looking at like wave height data to see if trends in wave height have changed over time. But after talking to the fishermen more at this conference, they're like, no, it really matters about wind direction, which is really specific to which port they're going out of. So I don't know if anyone else has like had discussions like this with commercial or charter fishermen, but trying to figure out like the best way to dig into the data and create a study that'll be useful.
Yeah. Always very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. And also that's helping just to build a relationship with this group of users who also feel very strongly about the way NOAA serves up various data. And apparently they're unhappy with marine forecasts being inaccurate with regard to what they're experiencing out on the water. So that's an interesting piece of information I can bring back to Weather Service folks. I'm sure they've heard this, but just echoing like this is what some users are saying and challenges they're facing about NOAA tools. So in addition, I've been doing a lot of increased outreach with closely aligned partners in the region, like the state coastal management programs. So this year, for the first time, I was asked to present about the Great Lakes Sea Grant Network at the Coastal Management Program's regional annual meetings. So the Coastal Management Programs and OCM that operates in the Great Lakes region. So that was a really good opportunity, and I think seeded some good conversations, and we'll see what that yields moving forward. It's especially timely because the Army Corps of Engineers has just launched a several-year study, over $10 million worth, looking into coastal resilience in the Great Lakes, and that's being done in collaboration with the states. So Sea Grant's not an active partner in that project, but it's obviously very relevant to what we do, and some of us work very closely with state management, coastal management programs. So I'm trying to figure out better ways for us to stay linked into where that study is going and collaborate, et cetera. And sorry.
We're going to need to wrap up. No, that's okay. It's very interesting. There's so much for everybody to share, and but we do have we want to do these regularly, and so ask that that you guys kind of keep us in mind, and we'll try to offer this opportunity with each one of our quarterly sessions. And then also what we're hoping to do is do a little bit more of a deeper, I don't want to say a deep dive, but a little bit more deep into one particular topic each time. And so as we were talking about this particular session, we all had realized that Hurricanes Fiona and Ian have made such an impact in the last couple of months. And obviously our hearts have gone out to Puerto Rico and Florida and all the things that they're experiencing right now. We really were wanting to maybe reach out to these programs and say, hey, are you really, do you have time to present, but then felt like that was maybe not the proper timing. So I actually spoke with Kelly Samick, and she has agreed to join us today, which we did think was very appropriate to talk about rapid response opportunities associated with not just hurricanes, but other things that are happening. So Kelly, I'm going to cue up your slides and let you take it over.
Okay. Yeah, if you just want to flip slides for me, we can just stay on your thing. If you want to go back to the title just briefly, I'm going to start by asking folks to either use the raise hands feature under the reactions or type into the chat. Just curious, first, how many folks are aware that your programs can seek funds from the national office to react to a disaster? Okay, hands. Not seeing too many. All right. Second question, how many people would know how to make that request? Not seeing any. Okay, seeing one thumbs up. Okay, good. Well, then hopefully this will be useful then, and you will learn something. So for folks who, I think I know most of you, but if you don't know, I'm the Federal Program Officer for the Gulf of Mexico programs. I topically mostly work in healthy coastal ecosystems and resilient communities and economies. We don't currently have a disaster specialist per se in NSGO, but by default of working in the Gulf of Mexico region, I have a lot of experience with disasters and probably have the highest number of awards made via this funding opportunity per se. And to demonstrate that, we can go to the next slide, because all my recent examples are things that I have worked on for the programs since I've been here. And I started in about 2016, so things got spicy pretty quick. After Hurricane Harvey, and this is just to give a flavor of the types of things that we have entertained in our office. There is a lot of mystery around this process because we don't have a written policy per se in classic Sea Grant fashion. So this practice of rapid response funding has been more dictated by that may change in the near future. There are some people thinking deep thoughts about a policy. The bright side of that is that what you lose in certainty when you have a policy, you can make up in flexibility. And so again, I think these examples illustrate some of the things that we look for, but show the diversity and the creativity that we can have in applying funds. So we basically have a certain amount of our budget, pretty small amount relatively, that we reserve for this type of endeavor, and generally ask that programs have, come to us with asks of $50,000 or less. And sometimes we just have less in the kitty at the particular time to make available. but in the recent years, this is what we've done. After Hurricane Harvey, Texas Sea Grant saw the opportunity to actually take a step forward into a program that they were planning to launch anyway. But because we could make that $50,000 available to hire somebody, they then launched their Community Resilience Collaborative to really get to work in the space post hurricane there. With Irma, and this is a fantastic demonstration of how impactful this work can be. Karen, actually, if you want to flip to the next slide, I've got some more information specifically on this particular project. Florida took about $38,000 for us, and at the request of a partner fishing industry, worked to coordinate overflights and identify using GPS where lost trap gear for the lobster industry was in the Keys. That enabled the lobster fishermen to go recover that equipment, and they estimated a savings of $4 million in doing that. So that's a huge ROI. So we love that type of story. So if you want to flip back to the previous, we'll go through the list. After Maria, you see Puerto Rico really putting forward funding, seed funding to researchers, PIs who had the opportunity to go out and grab data that was ephemeral. And that's like very good use and for sort of very traditionally in the mold of what we use rapid response funding for. So they used sort of like they would normally do with a PD funding opportunity for PIs. After Laura and Zeta over in Louisiana, they took opportunities, one, expanding harbors of refuge work that they had already done and were planning to do more of. And then after Zeta, which tore apart their Grand Isle Aquaculture Park, really using that to examine why the mooring system failed there. And the picture to the right there is Restigade, another great, just showing that sort of if you build it, they will come, allowing this project to happen, then gave this opportunity. Entergy came in and said, hey, we're getting rid of these double helix anchors that we use for our electrical equipment. We're upgrading, but for the mooring system that they were using, this was a tremendous opportunity to reuse that equipment to look if that's the solution for a more resilient aquaculture park in the future. So despite this list, it's not all hurricanes that qualify. We, again, don't have a policy that says what a disaster is. So where it begins is with leadership at a program identifying a need. They should come to their PO and say, here's the disaster that I would like some additional resources for. And in most recent case of a non-hurricane example, Florida came to us and said, look, we're expecting to experience this diadema die-off. And so that's the long-spined urchin. It's a keystone herbivore in the coral reef system in South Florida. It was being noticed in the Caribbean. And at the time that they first came to us, it was suspected that it was going to come into the Florida Reef Tract. And so again, sort of this classic fashion of an opportunity to gather ephemeral data that wasn't anticipated. The last die-off had been decades ago. They weren't able at that time. None of the agencies involved had been able to mobilize fast enough to collect a lot of data, and so there was a lost opportunity in this time. The program was able to say, hey, this is something we could do. So those are sort of classic key features: identifying the need, coming to us if it's not on our radar, like a hurricane usually is, saying here's the disaster we want to address and here's what we could do with a small amount of funding to play a significant role. So it can be, again, up to the program to be creative with describing a disaster, but certainly almost anything in the realm of traditional disasters, including flooding and other water-based events, would qualify. Okay, let's see, next slide, I think. I do want to go, oh, no, one back. No, sorry, go for it, Karen. There we go. Sorry, I'm on the wrong screen on my end. I do want to go over a few things to keep in mind, sort of, because people, again, have this mystery about this process. In terms of the scope, again, lots of creativity can be had here. We have lots of flexibility. We're looking for a few key things in terms of this wasn't foreseeable when a program applied for their omnibus funding, or there haven't been other opportunities to seek funds to do whatever's being pitched. You have to keep in mind that we do have statutory prohibitions on Sea Grant funds being used for the purchase, rental, construction, preservation of facilities, basically. And so that's a lot of what comes up in a disaster context that we can't ignore. We do need to stay true to the Sea Grant mission, right? And so a lot of what becomes difficult is certainly in the early days of response. We're not a community support organization, right? We're not a relief organization. We're not there to do the work that, say, the Red Cross does, or, FEMA does. It really does have to be a concept that fits the Sea Grant model. So we can't just give assistance to folks, but maybe if you're creative, you could work with a PI to do some sort of research project, which might entail giving things to people, right, that they need. But we do have to be mindful of being able to abide by our own regulations, to CFR 200, all of that. There's no shortcuts or no relief from our typical grants process. We just try to work faster. And so, it's a matter of coming in a timely fashion, being able to, get a scope and budget as quickly as possible. Once the program knows they want to move on something, the PO can make best efforts to process that as quickly as possible, but that still takes a few weeks. And then what we cannot alter is the fact that Grants Management Division still has their typical timeline of 60 days to be able to process an application. So there's no easy button, but there are things we can keep in mind, like during processing, the PO can ask Grants Management Division for something, say for pre-award spending authority that exceeds the typical 90 days that you would have by your research terms and conditions anyway. So that's all something that can be discussed when you're developing the concept in coordination with your PO. The other thing to remember, that other people's money spends real good too. And so that's, by virtue of having the system set up that we do, we can take advantage of that to pass through other funding if it's becoming available. So particularly within NOAA, we can transfer money pretty easily between organizations over to the National Sea Grant Office, and then take advantage of our grant process to get it to your institution. I haven't seen that a lot in the disaster context of rapid response funding, just due to people not usually having a lot of budget to sitting around to being able to allocate to this sort of thing. But it is a possibility. More often what I've seen is sort of longer term recovery opportunities using interagency agreements to get funding from FEMA to do things in longer term. So we're doing that. We did that after the Baton Rouge floods of 2016. We actually did that through a mission assignment, but through typical IAA and grant processes after Laura, and now after Ida. We're working on one right now. Next slide. The other big thing to keep in mind is the joy of our fiscal year timeline, which usually is biting us in the butt because we don't have a budget on time, and everybody's very familiar with how that impacts us and ends up really causing a lot of stress in the spring for us. With all the grants that we have to get out on all those funding opportunities, and everybody perpetually complaining that we have to release too much at once. Well, we have stressors too because of this with rapid response opportunities. But just so you're aware, the federal fiscal year obviously is supposed to run October 1st to September 30th, and we never have a budget in any of our collective memories on October 1st. So there's a little bit of uncertainty on there. It's also because that is also the end of the previous year. There's a little bit of a blackout period where getting something through very quickly can be a little tenuous. So we've got the continuing resolution uncertainty in the October timeframe. We're also not particularly able to move from anywhere from late July through September. The reason everything stacks up every year in the spring is because we have to get everything over to Grants Management Division by generally around June 30th, moves a little bit, to be an on-time action, because they again get their 60 days. they need to move through thousands of grants from all the NOAA programs at once. That's why we have that general deadline and that pressure at that time of year. Anything after June 30th or that marker of whatever that year is becomes a late action request. And that you can see highlighted here really gets a lot more scrutiny, and GMD has no commitment to getting it done or getting it done on time. They do it on a best a good faith effort. We have used this in the past for emergency funding. We did the Irma, Maria, Harvey as a late action request. It did go through. I've never seen GMD drop the ball. They're just not committed, have no obligation to get it through on time, but it does get additional scrutiny to go through from our higher levels, and has to be pretty well justified for them to move it as a late action request. So it's just something to be mindful of, because particularly here, that's of course hurricane season. So we have to work around some of these realities. And just also aware that there are, because of this transition between the fiscal years, Grants Online system, as well as our big accounting system through Commerce, do have shutdown periods. So again, things to just be mindful of and realistic about. These are not things that we have any ability to change. But again, I think my message would be, if you want to take advantage of this opportunity, talk to your PO early and work around these things with them. And I think that's it. If anybody has any questions or comments.
Great. Thank you, Kelly, so much. We really appreciate you, informing us about what opportunities are out there, and people can certainly reach out to Kelly or their program officer and your directors if you want to learn more. We are getting really close to the hour, so I just want to take a quick minute to let you know about 2 opportunities for service that exist with the Water Resource Network right now. The first is we are actually looking for people who want to serve on the steering committee. It's really looking for people who want to engage more actively with the Water Resource Network. It's open to anybody that might like to participate. We need at least 2 people to join us, and we'll probably be looking at starting in about early 2023. We'll take anybody that would like to volunteer, or if you'd like to nominate anyone, please just let me know. The second opportunity is I'm looking for some assistance with the website, the Water Resource Network website, as well as the newsletter. With the website, I'm really looking for somebody to help me on a very limited time commitment in the next couple of months, kind of just conceptualizing what that might best look like. And then with the newsletter, just helping a little bit of assistant, helping develop that on kind of a quarterly basis. This is not something that is going to be an ongoing time commitment, not every week or necessarily even every month, but just small snippets of time, like I said, about quarterly. So if anybody is interested in helping out with this, please let me know. And with that, I will just acknowledge that it's 3 o'clock if people have places to go. But if anyone has any questions for me or anyone else that's willing to stick around, I will be happy to stay for a few minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for organizing, Karen.
You bet.
Out of curiosity, with the Ask for Assistance